Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final regular season episode of Area Stat Leaders, brought to you by Spitzer Motors, located on West 4th Street over in Ontario. Go check them out. Check out their inventory today. But we're here. It's finally time to crown some regular season champs, Trav.
Absolutely, and I know for some of these players, it's going to be basketball season, so got to support the basketball jersey, the Jordan jersey. But still, a lot of players on this list are going to be playing in Week 11. And I just can't wait to see who finished number one in all three categories.
Yeah, other than rushing, which we'll get to towards the end, we had some really tight races. So let's dive straight in to our final regular season passing leaders list. And we'll kick things off with Malachi Bayless of Bucyrus getting back on the list at number 10. Was able to get by and get back into the list because Luke Bryant, unfortunately, wasn't able to play in that Week 10 game for the Arrows.
Yeah, he passed him by 5 yards, so the Week 10 performance by Malachi gives you a top 10 finish in the area. Congratulations, Malachi.
Edging him out by just 3 yards is Matt Sprang from Loudonville, who had kind of a lackluster performance in Week 10, but was still able to get his way on this list. At number 8, a guy who really stepped up this year for Northmore, AJ Bauer, a phenomenal year. Not too many years in the past have we seen a Golden Knight have this many yards.
Yeah, when Max Lauer went down, they tried to go through the air a little bit more, and AJ Bauer was able to do the job. If he can get 98 yards at Belair on Saturday, he will surpass the 2,000-yard mark, and they're going to need it. They're going to need a balanced attack. I know Max Lauer, who's not going to finish in the top 10 in rushing, did rush for 100 yards and a touchdown, 5 yards per carry against Loudonville, so hopefully they get that balanced football attack back because they're going to need it against the Big Red down in Belair.
They definitely will. And now at number 7, I almost feel like he deserves an award of himself as Mr. Consistent. Brandon Mitchell finishes off at number 7 from South Central, just a few yards short of the 2,000-yard milestone on the season, but he's just been solid all year long. So, nice job to Brandon for staying on this list all season long.
Yeah, and getting his team into week number 11, sneaking in after that win against Plymouth in week 10. So he'll have a chance to break 2,000 yards once again.
At number 6, it's Blake Foose out of Upper Sandusky. Nice job. He gets past the 2,000-yard milestone this year, and they're getting ready for a big Week 11 matchup as well.
Yeah, Seneca East. We just saw also their volleyball team playing for a district championship, but Blake Foose and his football squad trying to do some good things as well. Over 2,000 yards passing and 21 touchdowns on 167 completions.
And then busting into our top 5, Caden Holman of Upper Sandusky. Now, he'll have to have a big night. They've played some of those big giants this year, but having to go down and play the Clear Fork Colts in the Valley in hostile territory, he'll have to have a big night for the Rams if they'd like to move on. But Caden finishes at 5th on our list. At number 4, the freshman out of Shelby, Braden DeVito, holds on to a phenomenal season. They've got their hands full this week when they'll have to take on West Holmes, but obviously, he's been a bright patch for them this season that's been a little bit turbulent.
Yeah, Shelby, it's a football quarterback school. Started off back when you played in Brennan Armstrong, then Marshall Shepard and company, Braden DeVito, a couple other guys in there as well. I think there's another Shepard somewhere in the mix, probably down the lines. But Shelby has their quarterback for the next few years in Braden DeVito.
Now, diving into our top 3, West Holmes. This is the quarterback that's going to take off and play against Braden DeVito. Mason Wolf of West Holmes, a phenomenal season for him. He's got a lot of guys that surround him and allow him to do those things to get over 2,500 yards.
And you'd think maybe he'd have a chance of being our top passer, but with the running game they have with Sam Williams-Dixon and company, that it's a little bit more balanced. Even with that, still, 3rd place with 2,500 yards for Mason Wolf. 34 touchdowns, 136 passes, and 34 of them go to the house.
And finally, now at number 2, a guy that I thought maybe had a chance to catch our champion. I saw him last week against Galleon, but Caden Shadone, what a season for this guy. That's going to continue next week in the playoffs, but what a regular season. Numbers absolutely off the charts. Over 3,200 yards passing, and really helped his receivers, as we'll see on the next list as well.
And he's a good rusher as well, almost getting into the rushing list alone, but great numbers, mad numbers, as we always say. 33 touchdowns in River Valley. They're going to go on the road in Week 11, but if they want to pull off an upset, they're going to need him to contribute.
And then finally, I don't know if we need a drum roll or not, but it was a close race, but finishing off with our regular season passing champion, and that's going to be Isaac Robinson of the Willard Flashes. The guy never dropped from first place since our first episode this season. Incredible year, over 3,300 yards passing. I was trying really hard to find some Charlie Fry statistics because he makes you think it might be up there.
Yeah, you have to think, I don't know if Charlie Fry threw for closer to 4,000 yards passing, but still one of the best single-season performances in the history of the Willard Flashes. Barely missed out on the playoffs, needed just one more victory, but it's bringing Willard Flashes football back after so many years of not being that quite good, especially in the SBC. But this year they were competitive in almost every game, and he is one of the main reasons why they were able to do so.
So a huge congratulations. We'd like to give a shout out to Isaac Robinson, our regular season passing champion, but that'll do it for passing. We'll dive now and take a look at our receiving list, where we saw another tight race going off, but we'll start and we'll get to our champion at the top of the list. But coming in at number 10 on the list would be Evan Hill from Upper Sandusky. Found his way onto our list a few weeks ago and was able to hang on, catching a lot of passes via quarterback Hayden Holman.
Yeah, and that big performance against Colonel Crawford's really what busted him into the top 10, Upper Sandusky. Another one of those teams, kind of like Willard, that last few years haven't done too much, but this year really showed out. And now they got to go down to the Clear Fork Valley and try and break through that Clear Fork defense if they want to move on to week number 12. One of the few matchups between area teams coming up in the first round of the playoffs.
At number 9, someone that was catching a lot of those passes from Isaac Robinson, Carson Sinninger, 56 catches to be exact, almost got up to 800 yards, and to my knowledge, I believe this is his first appearance on our list, so a great time to do so for him. We've seen that combination of 3 Willard Flashes kind of trade spots on this list, with the exception of one that we will highlight later.
Yeah, and you'll see this in the receiving. There's going to be 3 duos of teammates that are going to be in this top 10. I like seeing that, because you'd think if you're a receiving leader that it maybe one because you're going to overtake, but because passing is such a bigger thing now in high school football. Well, with most teams, I mean, we'll see with these rushing numbers as well. Right. I guess it's more balanced, you could say, but some teams just like to stick it through the air, that air raid offense. So you'll see now multiple 2, maybe even 3 receivers. Ashland almost had 3 receivers break into the top 10, and Willard almost had 3 receivers break into the top 10. And the performance that Caden Shadone had, you'll see maybe a few River Valley players, but then there was a couple others that broke into the top 20 as well. So 4 in the top 20 in the area. That just tells you how great passing attacks some of these teams have.
Well, and speaking of Ashland, at number 8 is Landon McFrederick, a name that you've seen all season long on the stat leaders as well. 803 yards for him this season. He's been one of their top receivers, along with another guy we'll see when we move up the list. But moving on to number 7, there is one of those Vikings, Kean Shadone. 860 yards for him this season, catching those passes from brother Caden Shadone. And let's drop number 6 here too, because it's another
our first
Viking.
set, yeah.
Grant Butler, a phenomenal year as well. They both had a great night against Galleon as well.
Yeah, and despite the loss, because Galleon needed to get that victory from a big rushing performance by Gabe Ivey, but these 2 guys, they're 2 big receivers that you need to look out for in the postseason, and it's good having 2 receivers. I keep going back to this multiple receiver thing, but you just can't key on one player. It opens things up for your quarterback.
It definitely does. It allows them to go out and do things like getting multiple on this list when you have that many guys that can go line up in the slot no matter what position. But we'll hop up to another guy who's just been doing it all season long, and Halloween's coming up, so maybe Kyle's name could be Kyle the Monster Maltrick, because he's just been having a monster season for West Holmes.
Yeah, 18 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards receiving. And like we said, you got Sam Williams-Dixon running roughshod over everybody, but the passing game as well. You're going to need a balance, especially in the region that they are in, D4 Region 14, with them and Glenville at the top, and then the likes of Clear Fork in that defense, Galleon, Shelby. I can just go on and go on about the teams in that region, River Valley as well, but just the balance. That's what you need. You're going to need a good defense and a balanced offense if you want to make it far in the postseason, unless you have an RV like Carey did last year. You can just run it down their throats. But other than that, it's good to see balance. And this West Holmes team just continues to just impress week after week. You think they couldn't do anything more to impress you, yet they do.
For sure. And we'll have a top 5 receiver matchup as at number 4, Shelby's Isaiah Ramsey, who will have to have a big night if they want to try and keep up with the offensive West Holmes. Great season for him. Had a few rough weeks towards the end of the season, which kind of dropped him down from number 1 to 2, now to 4. But he'll have to have a big night against West Holmes if they want to keep pace with them, Travis.
Yeah, and 2 tough losses the last 2 weeks as well. They're getting pretty much blown out down at Shelby, not being able to get that offense going, and then the comeback by Ontario in week number 10. But hey, you're still in the postseason. You can bounce back from that, learn from your mistakes, and you're just going to need, let's just face it, you're going to need a perfect night if you want to have a chance at defeating West Holmes. But Isaiah Ramsey, he's one of those players that can do that for you.
For sure, and with Isaiah, a junior, and Braden, just a freshman this season, that's a duo that will come back next year as Shelby tries to kind of get back to the caliber that they are accustomed to. But let's dive into our top 3 now. A guy who's been catching passes from Mitchell all season long, Isaac Blair, busts into the top 3. Great time for him to kind of really get into stride here at the end of the season. Gets over that 1,000-yard barrier. Yep. And he's a really shifty playmaker for the Trojans, and it has been so all season long.
Yeah, he was down towards 7-8 spot midway through the season, but he kept big game after big game, and then last week really took off to jump him back up to number 3. This is a person, I always make the joke about fantasy football. Mm-hmm. This is the guy you want to draft. 17 touchdowns, but he also makes the catches. He has 84 catches and then 1,068 yards. So that complete, if you're one of those PPR leagues, points per reception, he's the guy you want to draft. But great season by Isaac Blair, Brandon Marshall's number 1 go-to receiver.
Coming in at number 2, here is the second half of that Arrow duo we alluded to. Jonathan Metzger, his highest placement on the list all season long. Another guy over 1,000 yards, over 50 catches, and his touchdowns really shot up there towards the end of the season as well. He was kind of sitting down more in the 5 or 6 range, but gets all the way up to 12, and is going to be a big piece for Ashland if they want to compete in the postseason.
Well, we're talking about trios of receivers. Metzger, McFrederick, and then Grayson Stewry, all over 100 yards receiving against Lexington in week number 10 for the Arrows. Big night for their passing game, even without Luke Bryant, playing. Must have had a concert or something on Friday night, but it didn't matter because Ashland putting up big numbers getting into the postseason.
They sure have. And now to our regular season receiving champion, a guy who's been putting up massive numbers all season long, Cam Robinson of the Willard Flashes. So Willard taking 2 of our championship list this year. And now, Cam, want to apologize. We don't have any footage of you that we would love to play, but this guy just been doing a phenomenal job catching all those passes from Isaac this season. Almost 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, and he also only bounced out of the number 1 spot, I believe, 1 week to Isaiah this year, but has held that for the entire rest of the season.
He did such a great job at wide receiver. It broke our cameras. Yeah. I cannot believe that. But
just too
Cam,
good.
Congratulations. It's a phenomenal finish, and like we said, with Brother Robinson at quarterback, it's bringing that pride back to Willard football. You love to see it. You love to see all these teams. I wish every team that we cover made the postseason. We almost did. At one point only, I think, going into week 10, we only had, I think, 12 teams out of the 43 we cover were eliminated. So that just tells you how great football is around here in Willard. They were one of those teams that had a chance, just needed a couple other things to go right in week number 10, but they just missed out. At least, though, it's good to see that pride back up at Willard.
Yeah, and also I do want to shout out Robinson. I did see was the leading scorer in the SBC Bay Division, so another milestone that he captured this year. And Well, Travis, now we head to the race that was all but decided almost after week 1. I shouldn't
Week
say
5,
that. There was some competition, but let's dive into our bell cows, the rushing leaders, and we'll start down at the bottom at number 10. Kalen LeMaster comes in for Centerburg, and it's saying something about our list if a guy like Kalen LeMaster is the 10th on this list.
Well, I mean, we've talked week in and week out about the 1-2 punch that is the rushing attack at Centerburg, and it's good to see both of them are in there. And well, Tyler Johnson, he'll be in this top 10. We'll see. But there's a couple. Again, you have those teams that pass the ball. You have a couple wide receivers in there, but then those good running attacks, you might see one or two, two rushers in the top 10 as well. And Centerburg, you are one of those teams as you get 2 home games in the postseason thanks to one Tyler Johnson and one Kalen LeMaster.
Yep, that'll be a great thing for the Trojans to get to have that home field advantage. Another team that will be coming into the postseason is Mount Gilead, and at number 9, Garrett George stays on our list. We've been seeing 2 guys from Mount Gilead on this list all season long. Their numbers have been strikingly close. There's a little separation this week, a little foreshadowing, but Garrett George, one of the Indians holding it down for Mount Gilead this season. At number 8, this is also a guy, it kind of strikes you, but represents the balance that Crestview has. If Addison Raymer is number 8 on our list, he's done a great job, stepped in to that running back position this year for Crestview, and has just been anything but amazing.
Well, the good thing, only 170 carries. He wasn't overworked. There was a couple other wide receivers that Crestview was able to use. They were able to open up the passing, and also Raymer, especially in the last few weeks, was able to catch some big passes, just like in that St. Paul game. Oh, and then they have a punter that can pass too. You saw the fake punt, but Crestview only 170 carries, so he's not going to be worn out going into week number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You see what I'm doing there?
Yeah, he's been sharing those carries with Mays.
Yeah. It's a really good thing to see at Crestview, and it's still good to see him, despite all that, do enough to get into our top 10, because you needed at least 1,184 yards just to get into the top 10. So congratulations once again, Mr. Raymer.
At number 7 is Mr. Sam Williams-Dixon of those West Home Knights. Another guy who gets into the end zone quite a bit. 23 touchdowns for him, just short of 1,300 yards on the season. And another guy who is going to be a piece of this team that we fully expect to make a deep run into the postseason. At number 6 is the other Mount Gilead rusher that made his way onto our list, Matt Bland, Mr. Anything But Bland. 1,309 yards for him, just short of 200 carries, and that duo has been really, really good for them this year.
Is it safe to say that the KMAC is mostly a rushing conference?
I think so.
Set aside a couple passers and the kids down at Loudonville and at Northmore, East Knox, even their freshman quarterback did something, but it seems like the KMAC once again is a rushing conference, and it's a rushing top 10 for the KMAC as well, because there's still a few names left to be shown here in the top 10 this week.
There are, and to no surprise, a KMAC rusher comes in at number 5, Tyler Johnson of Centerburg.
Okay, everybody. The Trojan twist.
Yeah, the Trojan twist. We can do it on here, too. We got the swivel stools, and that's something he's been doing all year long. Swiveling, juking, jiving, super
powering.
Crafty.
Yeah.
He's got all the skill sets that you want to have, and just he's kind of one of those that you would just classify as an athlete.
Absolutely. Even defensively, he made some plays against Fredericktown to win Freddyburg. 229 times he decided to just tuck it and run, and 19 of those went to the end zone, 1,501 yards. But we have kind of a dilemma here, Hayden.
We do, and we'll explain it as soon as we bring him up. Number 4 is Galleon's Gabe Ivey, a guy I saw have a monster week, over 300 yards for him in week 10. So I'll quickly just explain the reason that Gabe does surpass Tyler on our list. They have the same amount of yardage. Tyler does have one more touchdown, but Gabe's done it on 21 fewer carries.
Yep, the yards per carry average.
That's why Gabe does get the nod to get number 4. It's one of those where it could have gone, they both are high up there, but phenomenal season for Mr. Ivey. They continue to play super inspired, and they will take on Bellevue in week 11. So he'll have to have a big night against Ed Nasani and the Bellevue Redmen. But we'll just keep the KMAC spirit alive. At number 3 is going to be Tegan Rule of Fredericktown. Phenomenal year for him, getting back to that running back position and just being able to focus on his craft.
Yeah, and he's focusing on getting Fredericktown back to the postseason as well. 1,739 yards. He did go for over 100 yards against Centerburg in Freddyburg. 23 touchdowns, 240 carries. He also had a receiving touchdown in that game. So another one of those running backs that you can throw out of the backfield. And Tegan Rule just, continues to impress this season in at number 3.
At number 2, Quincy Crabbed walked his way, as you would say, Travis, all the way up to number 2, his highest positioning on our list this year. And having gotten the chance to see him this year, you see why he gets up to number 2, and he does it in a way he's not one of those that's super get to the outside and just run. He just wants to power through you.
Yeah, he just ran all over Monroeville in week number 10 to get him all the way back up to the number 2 spot, which is, I guess, the winner for everybody else, because there is one lone winner.
It is.
Pretty much after week 5, we knew it was pretty much clinched. It was safe to say after like 1% of the vote was in that he won this rushing championship after barely missing out. Was leading through 9 weeks last year and then just missed out. This time he did not let that even happen, was not even close. Who is it, Hayden?
Well, it is the one and only Dane Nauman of Highland, coming in over 400 yards above second place. Like you said, I think last year what Lincoln Mollenkoff was able to do probably kind of stuck with Dane, or maybe he didn't, and it just went out and did his thing all season long. Phenomenal stuff. Our regular season rushing champion, and I think it's safe to say we haven't seen a running back from an area team in quite a few years quite like Mr. Nauman. No,
he's just a powerful built running back that only a junior. I mean, that's crazy. You got to think there are going to be some major D1 football schools that will be going after this guy. Even against Clear Fork, in that Clear Fork attack defensively, still was able to get 79 yards. I think maybe that was the only time he didn't get over 100. I think he did get over 100 against Crestview. So, yeah, that one game, other than that, he just went all over everybody. It started off with a 300-yard rushing performance in week 1. But Dane Nauman and Highland, they're going to need him in the postseason. I know, your quarterback out with an injury, so he's going to have to, continue to carry the ball, get positive yardage, and keep moving the sticks for Highland if they want to continue to roll in the postseason.
That's for sure. So, obviously, with our rushing list, a lot of congratulations and thank yous go out to all the offensive lines that allowed their backs to rack up this kind of yardage this season. So big group shout out to all the offensive line units in the areas. Continue to keep it up. Run blocking sure isn't always pretty, and you don't get all the credit you deserve, but we like to hand that out to you here on Stat Leaders. But those are your regular season champions. Along with all the offensive line guys, too. That correlates to, your quarterbacks having time, your receivers able to get open. So all the other guys, too, that are a part of getting their teammates on this list, congratulations on great seasons. Any final thoughts about our regular season champs?
Figured Dane Nauman would come into that. A lot of big names. I mean, Robinson at Willard. Awesome what they did. Some young players getting in here. The duo from Mount Gilead as well, getting them back to the postseason for the first time in a long time. Also Centerburg as well. Just everybody out here impressed. A lot of names that you'll be seeing on here for maybe a year or 2 or 3 more, just depending on where they are with their grade this year. But I can't wait to see what they do next year. And can Dane Nauman repeat in his senior season from Highland? But we're not done. I mean, we still got 2 more weeks, and I think this is what we're going to do, Hayden. Work with me here, but I think we'll just do the top 10 performances of each week. So next week we'll do a top 10 performances of the week, then we'll reset and do another top 10 for our final week. So 2 more weeks of this, and we'll do the top 10 weekly performances in the postseason. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think so. So obviously, these were our regular season champions. We wanted to give them that honor that they'll have. Obviously, not every single guy on this list will be in the postseason, but as Travis just said, we got 2 more episodes that are going to be coming your way. Postseason Stat Leaders. It'll look a little different, but we're excited to get a couple more episodes out while we get into the postseason. But that's it for our regular season leaders list. And of course, obviously, a big shout out goes to Spitzer Motors being our exclusive sponsor. A big shout out to Matt Studer, the GM over there in Ontario, for putting a lot of belief in us in the show, and we appreciate their support. So looking forward to a few more episodes, but that'll wrap up this episode. So he's Travis, and I didn't even get to say any nicknames today, so
it's all right. It takes 5 minutes off of the video.
It does. But he's Travis, I'm Hayden, and we'll see you next week for our first Tournament Stat Leaders episode.